I was standing in a sequin navy gown, holding a glass of champagne I couldn't swallow, when the projector behind the stage flickered to life. The charity gala was mid-toast. My ex-husband Eric smiled smugly beside his 20-something fiancée when the MC's voice announced, "And our final honoree tonight, founder and CEO of Golden Apple Learning, Laura Kensington." The screen filled with my face, my company's logo, the cover of Forbes Women in Tech. Eric's smile froze. His fiancée's hand dropped from his arm. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just let the applause swell, watched him realize, in front of 200 of his clients, that the unprofitable housewife he'd divorced 18 months ago was now the woman his firm had just lost its biggest contract to. That's when it hit me. The delicious, quiet irony. He once told me I wasn't worth investing in. He was right, because I never belonged to his portfolio. My name is Laura Kensington, and until last year, I was the unpaid assistant, therapist, and punching bag to a man who thought love was an investment portfolio. For 12 years, I believed Eric when he said my ideas were cute but impractical. I believed him when he said real success required ruthlessness I didn't possess. I believed him because I'd spent so long making myself small enough to fit into his carefully calculated life. Eric measured everything. Our grocery bills went into color-coded spreadsheets. Date nights had budgets. Even my birthday gifts came with receipts stapled to cards, like he might need to return me for store credit someday. He called it efficiency. I called it suffocating, but only in my head, only in the shower where he couldn't hear me cry. He was a financial executive at Henderson Marks, a mid-tier investment firm in downtown Seattle. Smart, ambitious, the kind of man who could make a pitch deck sound like poetry. People admired him. His colleagues envied his discipline. His clients trusted him with millions. I was the wife who made all of that possible. Our marriage wasn't always cold. In the beginning, Eric seemed supportive. He attended my college graduation, told me my teaching degree was admirable. But somewhere between year 3 and year 7, admirable became expendable. My dreams shrank to fit his schedule. I stopped mentioning the online tutoring concept I'd sketched out during the early pandemic months. Parents were desperate for help. Teachers were retiring in droves. I saw a gap, a real need I could fill. But when I brought it up over dinner one night, Eric barely looked up from his laptop. "That's a hobby, Laura, not a business." His words landed like a gavel. Final. Unchallengeable. I never brought it up again. Instead, I became his assistant. I typed his proposals while he golfed with clients. I entertained his boss and his boss's wife, smiling through their condescending questions about when we'd have children. I nodded when Eric explained that my job was to support his career, not compete with it. And when his firm offered him a junior partnership, when they asked for a $50,000 buy-in, I cashed out the small inheritance my mother left me. He promised we were in this together. The dinner party happened in March, 2 years ago. Eric invited 6 colleagues to our house for what he called a strategic networking opportunity. I spent the afternoon preparing salmon, roasting vegetables, setting the table with the good china we'd received as wedding gifts but never used. His boss, Martin Graves, arrived first with his wife. Then came 2 junior associates and their dates. Everyone drank expensive wine Eric had picked out, laughed at his jokes, complimented the house I'd decorated and maintained. At some point, the conversation turned to side hustles. One associate mentioned his wife's Etsy shop. Another talked about his brother's food truck. Then Martin turned to me with a patronizing smile. "Laura, Eric mentioned you had some cute little business idea once. Online teaching or something." The table went quiet. I felt Eric's eyes on me, measuring my response. "Just something I thought about during lockdown," I said carefully. "Connecting retired teachers with homeschooling families." Martin laughed. Actually laughed. "That's adorable. Like a lemonade stand for educators." The others joined in, chuckling politely. One associate said education technology was a graveyard for failed startups. Another mentioned how hard it was to monetize anything involving teachers because they never had money to spend. I waited for Eric to defend me, to say something, anything, that acknowledged my idea had merit. Instead, he shrugged and said, "Laura just likes to play entrepreneur. Keeps her busy while I handle the real work." The words hit me like cold water. I smiled through the rest of dinner, poured coffee, cleared plates, played the perfect hostess. But inside, something cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet fracture I wouldn't fully understand until months later. That night, lying in bed while Eric snored beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when I'd become so small. When had I agreed to be decorative instead of functional? When had I traded my dreams for his approval? I didn't have answers yet, but the questions had started, and once they started, they wouldn't stop. The divorce papers arrived on our 15th anniversary. I remember because I'd made reservations at the Italian restaurant where he proposed. I'd bought a new dress, cream-colored with delicate buttons down the back. I was standing in our kitchen, checking the time, when Eric walked in with his briefcase and a manila envelope. "We need to talk," he said. No preamble. No apology. He set the envelope on the granite countertop between us like a business transaction. "I'm filing for divorce. My attorney says we can keep this simple if you cooperate." I stared at him. 15 years. 15 years of typing his emails, hosting his dinners, sacrificing my inheritance for his career. And this was how it ended. With a manila envelope on our anniversary. Why? My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Eric sighed like I was being difficult. "We want different things, Laura. You're comfortable with mediocrity. I'm not. You have no ambition, no drive. Honestly, staying married to you feels like a bad investment." A bad investment. That's what 12 years of marriage meant to him. A portfolio that wasn't performing. He had a spreadsheet. Of course he did. He pulled it up on his laptop right there in the kitchen, showed me a detailed breakdown of our financial situation. According to his calculations, I'd contributed almost nothing to our household income over the past 5 years. Never mind that I'd cashed out my inheritance for his partnership. Never mind the unpaid labor of managing our home, our social calendar, our entire life. "I'm offering you a fair settlement," he said. 30,000 and you keep your car. That's generous considering your financial dependency. $30,000. For 15 years. I should have screamed. Should have thrown the laptop across the room. Should have called a lawyer and fought him for every cent he'd taken from me. Instead, I just nodded. "Okay." He looked relieved. Surprised, but relieved. Like he'd expected more resistance. "I'll need you out by Friday," he added. "I'm putting the house on the market. You can take whatever fits in your car." That was Tuesday. I had 3 days to pack up 15 years of my life. I didn't call anyone. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. I moved through our house like a ghost, carefully selecting what mattered. My college textbooks still lined up on the shelf in the guest room. The box of my mother's things I'd never fully unpacked after she died. My laptop, old but functional. Clothes that actually fit, not the sizes Eric said I should wear. By Thursday afternoon, everything I owned fit into 4 boxes and 2 suitcases. The house we'd built together, or rather, the house I'd maintained while he built his career, suddenly felt like a hotel. Impersonal. Temporary. A place I'd never really lived, just existed in. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Didn't even leave a note. What would I say? "Thank you for making me realize how little I mattered. Thanks for the memories." I drove to a motel on the outskirts of Seattle. $49 a night. Weekly rates available. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. The shower had low water pressure. The mattress sagged in the middle. It was the first place that felt like mine in over a decade. That first night in the motel, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the sagging mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger. Something sharper, more focused. Determination. I pulled out the notebook from my college days, the one where I'd sketched teaching plans and classroom management strategies back when I still believed I could make a difference. Tucked in the back pages was the original concept I'd drafted during lockdown. The online platform connecting retired teachers with homeschooling families. Golden Apple. I'd even named it back then. The idea was simple. Thousands of experienced teachers were retiring early, burned out but still passionate about education. Meanwhile, parents were struggling to homeschool effectively, desperate for guidance, but unable to afford private tutors. What if there was a platform that connected them? Affordable hourly consultations, curriculum planning, virtual mentoring. Eric had called it a hobby. Martin Graves had called it a lemonade stand. Sitting in that motel room, unemployed and divorced, I decided to prove them all wrong. I spent the next week researching everything I could find about education technology, startup funding, platform development. I had $30,000 from the settlement, a laptop, and absolutely nothing to lose. The learning curve was steep. I watched YouTube tutorials on basic coding, joined online forums for entrepreneurs, downloaded free design software. Every night, I worked until my eyes burned, surviving on instant ramen and gas station coffee. My friend Vanessa, a teacher I'd worked with years ago, let me use her garage when she found out what I was doing. It wasn't much. Leaking roof, concrete floor, space heater that buzzed constantly. But it had internet and electricity, and most importantly, it was free. "You're actually doing this," Vanessa said, watching me set up a folding table and secondhand office chair. "I'm actually doing this," I confirmed. She smiled. "About damn time." I built the first version of Golden Apple's website using a template and sheer stubbornness. It was clunky, amateurish, probably violated several design principles. But it worked. Teachers could create profiles. Parents could search by subject and schedule consultations. The platform handled payments and reviews. Finding investors was harder. Much harder. I sent emails to every venture capital firm in Seattle, got rejected by most, and ignored by the rest. The few who agreed to meet me clearly saw me as a waste of time. One investor, a man named Preston Cole, actually laughed during my pitch. "Education tech is where good money goes to die," he said. "Teachers don't have budgets. Parents are cheap. You're trying to monetize poverty and good intentions." Another firm told me I seemed too domestic to understand real business. A woman named Catherine Boyle said my background lacked the ruthlessness necessary for startup culture. "You're a teacher at heart," she said, like it was an insult. "This space requires sharks, not nurturers." I left each meeting feeling smaller, questioning whether Eric had been right about me all along. Maybe I was delusional. Maybe this was just a hobby dressed up in business casual. But then I'd return to Vanessa's garage, see the dozen teachers who'd already created profiles, read the messages from desperate parents begging for help, and I'd remember why I started. This wasn't about proving Eric wrong. This was about solving a problem nobody else cared about. My only investor, at first, wasn't an investor at all. Mrs. Caldwell, my 10th grade English teacher, somehow found out what I was doing. She was 82, living on a teacher's pension in a small apartment in Tacoma. She sent me a check for $6,000 with a note written in her perfect cursive. "If anyone can make this work, it's a teacher's daughter. Your mother would be proud." I cried when I opened that envelope. Actual sobbing in Vanessa's garage, clutching a check from a woman who probably couldn't afford to give away $6,000 but believed in me anyway. I deposited the money and immediately spent $3,000 on better server hosting. Another $2,000 went to hiring a freelance developer to fix the most glaring technical problems. The last $1,000 I saved for emergencies. For 3 months, I lived on rice and canned soup. I coded until 2 in the morning, tested features, fixed bugs, reached out to every retired teacher I could find through alumni networks and Facebook groups. By November, I had 47 teachers registered and 12 paying families. It wasn't much, but it was real. The breakthrough came from a homeschooling mom in Portland named Angela. She'd hired one of my teachers, a retired chemistry professor named Dr. Yates, to help her daughter prepare for AP exams. After 3 sessions, Angela posted about it in a massive homeschooling Facebook group. "Found this amazing platform called Golden Apple," she wrote. "Real teachers, affordable rates, actually helpful. My daughter finally understands stoichiometry." I was in the garage when my phone started buzzing. Email notification after email notification. New teacher registrations. New parent accounts. Consultation bookings flooding in. Within 48 hours, 1,200 parents had signed up. My server crashed twice. I spent an entire day on the phone with hosting support, upgrading infrastructure I couldn't quite afford yet. Vanessa brought me Thai food and told me to breathe. "You're going viral," she said, grinning. "I'm having a panic attack," I corrected. But underneath the panic was something else.
Joy.
Pure, unfiltered joy. This thing I'd built in a garage, this idea everyone dismissed, was actually working.
People needed it. People wanted it.
Maybe I wasn't delusional after all. The venture capital firm reached out in December. Bryant and Associates, a mid-sized firm in downtown Seattle. They'd seen the Forbes article about emerging education startups and noticed Golden Apple's sudden growth. I almost didn't go to the meeting. Their office was in the Columbia Tower, the same building where Eric's firm, Henderson Marks, occupied 3 floors. I'd successfully avoided that building for months, had taken elaborate detours just to avoid seeing anyone I knew from his world. But this was business. My business. I couldn't let fear of running into Eric stop me. I bought a blazer from a thrift store, pressed it carefully, wore it with my best jeans and the only professional shoes I owned. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. I looked different. Thinner, tired, but somehow more solid. More real. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. I presented user metrics, growth projections, testimonials from teachers and parents. I explained the revenue model, the scalability potential, the market gap we were filling. The lead partner, a woman named Tessa Whitman, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back and smiled. "How does $2.4 million in seed funding sound?" I almost asked her to repeat it. $2.4 million. For my garage startup. For the hobby Eric had mocked. For the lemonade stand Martin Graves had laughed about. "There are conditions," Tessa continued. "We want equity, obviously. And we'll need you to hire a real development team, proper marketing, scale this properly."
Can you handle that?
Could I handle running a real company? Could I manage employees, budgets, growth? 6 months ago, I couldn't even imagine leaving my marriage. Now someone was offering me millions to bet on myself. "Yes," I said. "I can handle it." We signed the term sheet the following week. The money hit my business account in January. I hired 3 developers, a marketing coordinator, and a customer service manager. We moved out of Vanessa's garage into a small office space in Fremont. Golden Apple was no longer a hobby. It was a real company, growing faster than I'd ever imagined possible. And Eric had no idea it existed. The Forbes article published in early February. The unexpected disruptor. How one divorced teacher built an edtech solution from a garage. They included my photo, the Golden Apple logo, quotes from teachers and parents who'd used the platform. The journalist, a woman named Patricia Hayes, had been particularly interested in my origin story. I'd been careful not to mention Eric by name, but I told her about being dismissed, being called unprofitable, building something out of spite and determination. "You're proof that failure is often just delayed success," Patricia wrote, "and that the best revenge is becoming the person they said you could never be." The article went moderately viral. Education blogs picked it up. Homeschooling forums shared it. Within a week, we'd gained 8,000 new users. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Podcast invitations, speaking requests, interview opportunities. I was suddenly the face of a movement I hadn't realized I was starting. And that's when Eric saw it. His fiancée showed it to him first. Her name was Amber, 28 years old, worked in marketing at some startup downtown. She'd seen the Forbes article, thought it was inspiring, showed it to Eric over breakfast. I know this because Amber herself told me later, after everything fell apart for her too. Eric had stared at my photo for a long time. Then he'd Googled Golden Apple, read about the funding, the growth metrics, the press coverage. According to Amber, his face had gone completely white. "Is this your ex-wife?" Amber had asked. "She was a teacher," Eric had said slowly. "She didn't have any business experience." "How did she?" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Unable to reconcile the woman he dismissed with the woman now featured in Forbes, backed by millions, running a successful company. 3 days later, he texted me for the first time in 10 months.
Hey, Laura.
Saw the article. Really proud of you. We should talk. I stared at that message for a full minute. Really proud of you. Like he'd had anything to do with my success. Like his dismissal hadn't been the catalyst for everything I'd built. I deleted the message without responding. He didn't give up easily. Over the next 2 weeks, Eric sent 6 more texts. Casual at first, then increasingly desperate. Would love to grab coffee and hear about your journey. I know things ended badly, but I've always believed in you. Let me make it up to you. Dinner? Just as friends. Finally, I agreed to coffee. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Not because I'd forgiven him. But because I needed him to see, face to face, exactly who I'd become without him. We met at a cafe in Capitol Hill, neutral territory. He arrived 15 minutes late, looking polished and practiced. Designer suit, expensive watch, the same confident smile he'd worn throughout our marriage.
Laura.
You look amazing. Success suits you. I didn't smile back. What do you want, Eric? He sat down, ordered a complicated espresso drink, launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. He'd made mistakes. He'd been too focused on his own career. He'd failed to see my potential. But he was different now, more mature, ready to support my dreams. I could actually help you scale, he said. I know people, investors, potential partners. Let me advise you. I let him finish. Let him pitch himself like he was closing a business deal. When he finally stopped talking, I took a slow sip of my coffee. Eric, I appreciate the offer. But I learned everything I needed to know about scaling from you. He looked hopeful. Really?
Yes.
I learned exactly what not to do. His smile faltered. Laura, come on. Don't be petty. I'm not being petty. I'm being honest. I leaned forward. You taught me that some people measure worth in dollars and percentages. You taught me that to men like you, people are investments that need to perform. You taught me that I was never going to be profitable enough for your portfolio. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is spending 15 years supporting someone who saw me as an expense item. What's not fair is cashing out my mother's inheritance for your career and getting $30,000 when you decided I wasn't worth keeping. What's not fair is being called a bad investment by the man I loved. Eric's face had gone red. I apologize. No, you expressed regret about your timing. There's a difference. I stood up, left a $10 bill on the table for my coffee, and walked out before he could respond. What Eric didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone except Vanessa, was that one of my investors wasn't a stranger at all. Marion Duval had been at that dinner party 2 years ago. She was Martin Graves' wife, the woman who'd smiled politely while her husband called my idea adorable. She'd sat at my table, eaten my salmon, said nothing while Eric dismissed me as someone who liked to play entrepreneur. After the divorce, after the Forbes article, Marion had called me directly. I've been following your company, she'd said. I want in. I'd been confused. You're married to Martin. He laughed at my idea. My husband laughs at a lot of things he doesn't understand. I built a tech company in the 90s and sold it for $40 million. Martin thinks it was luck. It wasn't. She'd paused. I see what you're building, Laura. I see who you are. And I want to invest. Marion had put in $500,000 as a silent partner. Silent because she didn't want Martin knowing. Silent because she enjoyed the irony of funding the woman her husband had mocked. Men like Eric and Martin, she told me, they never see women as capital. They see us as costs. Let's prove them wrong quietly. That's the best revenge. The charity gala invitation arrived in March. The Pacific Northwest Children's Foundation annual benefit. Black tie, 200 guests, Seattle's business elite gathering to write tax-deductible checks and network. Eric's name was printed at the bottom as one of the hosts. I almost declined. Almost threw the invitation in the trash. But then I saw another name on the host committee. Tessa Whitman, my lead investor from Bryant and Associates. I called her. Did you arrange this?
Tessa laughed.
I might have suggested they honor emerging entrepreneurs this year. And I might have specifically recommended you. Is that a problem? Eric will be there. I know. I understood then. This wasn't about charity. This was about making a statement, about walking into Eric's world, not as his dismissed ex-wife, but as someone who'd outgrown him entirely. What do I wear to something like this? I asked. Something that makes you feel invincible, Tessa said. I bought the navy gown on a Tuesday afternoon. Sequined, elegant, the kind of dress Eric always said was too flashy for me. He'd liked me in neutrals, beiges, and grays that didn't draw attention. This dress demanded attention. Vanessa helped me with makeup and hair. She curled my hair into soft waves, applied dark lipstick I'd never worn before. You look like someone who could ruin a man's entire evening, she said, grinning. That's the plan. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors. I arrived alone, handed my coat to the attendant, and walked into the ballroom like I belonged there. Because I did belong there. I was an invited honoree, a successful founder, someone worth celebrating. I spotted Eric immediately. He was near the bar with Amber, both dressed perfectly, playing the happy couple. He hadn't seen me yet.
Good.
I wanted the reveal to be public, unavoidable. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and found my seat at one of the front tables. Tessa was already there, along with several other investors and entrepreneurs. Ready, she whispered. Ready. Dinner passed in a blur. Salad, salmon, speeches from various board members. I barely tasted anything, too focused on the moment I knew was coming. Finally, the MC, a local news anchor, stepped to the podium. Our final honoree tonight represents the best of Pacific Northwest innovation. She built a successful education platform from nothing but determination and a garage. Please welcome founder and CEO of Golden Apple Learning, Laura Kensington. The projection screen behind the stage lit up. My face, professional headshot from the Forbes article. The Golden Apple logo. Screenshots of the platform. User testimonials scrolling past. The applause started. I stood, smiled, began walking toward the stage. And that's when I saw him. Eric, frozen mid-sip, champagne glass halfway to his mouth. His eyes locked on the screen, on my face, on the company name he'd never heard before tonight. Amber's hand dropped from his arm. The color drained from his face. Every person he'd ever introduced me to was watching. Martin Graves, mouth hanging open. The junior associates who'd laughed at my dinner party. Clients who'd met me as Eric's accommodating wife. They were all watching me accept an award for building something Eric swore I couldn't build. I gave a short speech. Thanked my investors, my teachers, my users. Mentioned building the company after a difficult divorce, though I didn't name Eric. Didn't need to. Everyone in that room could connect the dots. The applause when I finished was thunderous. Walking back to my table, I passed Eric's. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. In that brief moment, I saw everything. Shock, rage, humiliation, something that almost looked like respect. I didn't stop walking. The rest of the evening became a blur of congratulations, business cards, opportunities. A hospital system wanted to discuss using Golden Apple for patient education. A charter school network wanted a partner on curriculum development. A tech journalist asked for an exclusive interview. Through it all, I felt Eric watching me. But I never looked back. When I finally left, sometime after midnight, I passed by his table one last time. He and Amber were arguing in fierce whispers. She looked furious. He looked destroyed. I stepped into the cool Seattle night, handed my ticket to the valet, and waited for my car with the kind of peace I'd never felt while married to him. Eric's retaliation started within a week. Subtle at first. Rumors began circulating that Golden Apple's metrics were inflated. Anonymous posts on investor forums questioned our revenue model. Someone leaked a fake story about teachers being underpaid through our platform. I knew it was him. His fingerprints were all over it. But what Eric didn't know was that someone was already investigating him. The SEC had been building a case against Henderson Marks for months. Suspicious trading patterns, possible insider information, financial discrepancies that didn't add up. One of Eric's own partners, a man named Timothy Ross, turned state's witness in exchange for immunity. He'd been documenting everything for 2 years, waiting for the right moment to bring the firm down. The news broke in May. Henderson Marks was under federal investigation. Eric's assets were frozen. Clients pulled their money. The firm collapsed in slow motion over 6 weeks. I learned about it the same way everyone else did. News articles, LinkedIn updates, whispers through Seattle's business community. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. Just watched it happen with the same detachment he'd shown when he handed me divorce papers. Eric showed up at my office in June, disheveled, wearing jeans and a t-shirt I'd never seen before. My assistant tried to stop him, but he pushed past, burst into my office unannounced. "I need to understand," he said. "How did you do it?" I looked up from my laptop, considered calling security, decided to give him 5 minutes. "Do what?" "Build all this." He gestured vaguely. "You had no experience, no connections, no business training."
How?
I leaned back in my chair. "By believing in something you never could." "Which was?" "Me." He stood there, silent, absorbing that. Then, quietly, "I made a mistake letting you go."
No, Eric.
"You made a mistake thinking you ever had me to let go." I returned to my laptop. "We're done here." He left without another word. I watched him through my office window, walking across the parking lot to a car I didn't recognize. Probably borrowed. His Tesla had been seized with everything else. That Christmas morning, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Legal documents. Henderson Marks had officially declared bankruptcy. Eric's name was listed among the partners being investigated for fraud. I signed the documents, returned them to my attorney, then wrote a check for $50,000 to a women's entrepreneurship fund. I looked out at the snow falling over Seattle, soft and quiet, and whispered to the empty room. "You were right, Eric. I wasn't worth investing in. I was worth building." Then I called Vanessa and invited her to dinner. We had a lot to celebrate.